In this lesson, we're going to review the order of operations. For some of us, the order of operations is important to help answer a skill testing question in a context. But for those of us in Math 10, the order of operations is very important to be successful in algebra, which is a big theme in this course. We use algebra to help us model real life and solve problems. We use algebra as the basis for future topics of study in mathematics. And we use algebra as a way to practice logic and reasoning. Even if we won't solve equations later in life, being able to use reasoning skills and logic can help us to solve other problems. Algebra is based on some very important concepts, and the order of operations helps us build the idea that math works the same way each time. When we talk about the order of operations, you've probably heard a math teacher before talk about BEDMAS or PEDMAS. It turns out these mean exactly the same thing. The B, or the P, would stand for brackets or parentheses. And brackets and parentheses mean the same thing. We have several different styles of brackets and parentheses. It doesn't matter what they look like. The important idea is that with brackets and parentheses, where the B and the P are the first part of BEDMAS or PEDMAS, whatever is inside those brackets or those parentheses gets built or gets evaluated first. So for example, in an expression like this, we would take a look at the 2 subtracting 1 first. Those brackets may also remind you about the distributive property. We'll touch on that a little bit later. Before we move on from brackets, we should also talk about invisible brackets. There are a few places in this course that we will run across invisible brackets. The first is in fractions. It turns out any time that we see a fraction with more than one term in the numerator or the denominator, there are invisible brackets around the entire numerator and the entire denominator. So in this example, before we do our dividing, we'd look at the 2 multiplied by 9 and the 5 adding 1. So this fraction would become 8 divided by 16, which is equal to 3. Another place where we see invisible brackets is with roots. It turns out anytime we have any kind of root, in this case a cubed root, there are brackets around everything underneath that root symbol, just like this. So before we take the cube root, we have to perform a multiplication of 2 multiplied by 16 to get 32, and then we add 32 and 32 to make 64, and then we take our cube root. The next part of BEDMAS or PEDMAS is the E for exponents. We've seen exponents before, and this is a good time to remind ourselves that sometimes the upside down V is a symbol for exponent. It turns out that the E in exponents has a hidden partner. E in BEDMAS or PEDMAS doesn't just mean exponents, it means exponents and roots. In another unit for this course, we'll find out why roots and exponents are so closely related. But for now all we have to remember is that anything involving exponents or roots is something that we will build or evaluate after everything that's inside brackets has been built or simplified or evaluated already. The next part of BEDMAS is the D and the M. These stand for multiplication and division. And keep in mind, there are lots of different ways that we can show multiplication and division in math class. A few examples are shown here. With multiplication and division, it doesn't matter that D comes before M or M comes before D. We build or evaluate those pieces as they show up in the expression from left to right. The last part of BEDMAS is the A and the S. These stand for addition and subtraction. We're going to build or evaluate any addition or subtraction at the end, after all the multiplication, after all the division, and those happened after all the exponents and roots, and those happened after everything inside the brackets. Addition and subtraction happens left to right, just like multiplication and division. So now let's look at some examples. Here's a simple one. We see that we have addition. There's some multiplication happening with that 4 in front of the brackets. It's invisible multiplication. And then we do have an expression inside brackets. So let's start out with the 2 subtract 1. That simplifies to become 1. And then we have adding and multiplying. Multiplying happens next. So we have 8 added to 4 multiplied by 1, which is 4. And now we look at 8 added to 4 is 12. Here's a more complicated example. And this is where thinking about building the expression can sometimes come in handy. When we look at this expression, I see adding 3 halves. Well, addition happens at the very, very end of BEDMAS, so I'm going to ignore that 3 halves for now. And then I take a look at the fraction, and I'm going to add all of the invisible brackets around the numerator, around the denominator. I don't really have to, but it could help, and underneath the root. So now underneath the root, I see multiplication, and I see an exponent. E comes before the M in BEDMAS. The exponent will be happening first. So let's build that 3 squared. Then we're going to build the term that's multiplied. And now we'll use addition to finish off the expression underneath the square root symbol. We're going to add the root symbol. Exponents and roots happen before division. Now let's put in the division. And lastly, build in the addition of 3 halves. Here we've built the expression. Following the same process, we can evaluate. Let's change that 3 squared into a 9. Next up is the multiplication. 8 multiplied by 2 is 16. Next is addition. 16 and 9 is 25. Take the square root of 25. Now 5 divided by 10, that's 1/2. And 1/2 adding 3 halves is 4 halves, which gives us a 2. This has just been a quick review of the order of operations. If you're still confused, you may find it useful to come in for some extra help or to visit Khan Academy online to see some more examples. Keep in mind, our end goal is to be able to use the order of operations to help build and solve equations to become a stronger mathematician.